for making it a podcast. And today's another special day, back in my living room recording, but I'm with my neighbour, Malcolm Mortimer. So, introduce yourself and what career did you have in your path, and what's your context behind who Malcolm is?
Oh, goodness me. Yes, as I live next door. That's my only qualification, really. Apart from the fact that I spent 3 years in a bank in Glasgow. I eventually then managed to escape from the bank in Glasgow without lots of cash, unfortunately, but I got out of that. Took some more qualifications and wanted to get as far away from the west of Scotland as I possibly could. So I picked Nottingham University to come down and study at. Um, got a degree here years ago. I mean, 1981, I think I qualified in the end. But in order, just again, it's a life thing. In order to get to that situation, to actually go to university, when I was at school, my parents expected my brother and I to make it and follow the normal path that our lot expected, which was to do very well at school and to go to Oxford or Cambridge and get a top degree and just sail on in life.
Is that what they did?
Well, sort of, yeah. I mean, my dad and my mum both met at Birmingham University, so it wasn't Oxford or Cambridge. My dad was too thick for that, really. Mum wasn't. She was brilliantly clever. But no, Dad was actually a highly skilled chemical engineer and turned out to have a very, very good career. He was on the board of a major pharmaceutical company as chief engineer. So he obviously did very well. But he sort of expected me to be scientifically orientated and to be good at maths and things like that, and to be interested in practical things like repairing cars. And that is, funnily enough, I don't know how it turned out this way, but I took after Mum's side of the family. She was very artistic. She was a professional musician, a professional pianist, and accompanist. And she got a music degree from Birmingham University. And so I really took after her side, and Dad would try and show me how to repair a car and said, "Would you be interested in looking at me doing this?" So I said, "Yes, Daddy," because he was very Victorian, and we had to be very, very obedient, and he was very dictatorial towards us. But so yes, I had to pretend to be interested, and then I'd just sort of disappear somewhere. I said, "Where are you?" I'm repairing this carburetor. Come and have a look. This is what you do. So I said, "Oh, right. Okay." So he said, "You could do it the next time." And so I said, "Okay." So I didn't actually, when I was at school, I didn't actually follow all these things that I was expected to do. I was sent away to get the very best education in the world, apparently, sent away to a top public school um, on the proviso that if I really didn't like it, because I'd said I don't want to go there. And I was happy where I was. We were living in Cambridge, and I got loads of friends there, and I didn't want to go. I didn't want to leave. Um, and he said, "Well, give it 2 years." And so, 2 years to the day, I got in touch with my dad and said, "Right, I want to come home now." And so I went back to the grammar school at Cambridge because I'd got the 11 plus. In those days, you had, I don't know, do they still have 11 plus exams? No,
No, no,
I
not
wouldn't
at
have
all
thought
now.
so. No.
It's all Sats and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Well, anyway, I got past my 11 plus anyway to go to the grammar school, but hadn't taken it up because I was sent away to into the wilds of Northamptonshire to a public school.
So, what led you to Nottingham, and then
Ah,
eventually tying into what you ended up doing for a career?
so I failed. I, I came back to Cambridge, didn't get the A levels I needed to go to university at the time, which was my expected path that my parents had put me on that launch pad. And I was playing too much cricket and didn't go to a couple of exams because I was supposedly ill. And my mum tried to persuade the headmaster that I was ill, and he said, "Would you mind if I had a word with him?" And she said, "Oh, well, I think he's in the bath at the moment." She realised she made a complete arse of it, and he knew that added to which I got a 50 in one of the cricket matches I was playing in for my cricket club, and it was in the Cambridge News that night. And so he read it, and I was nearly chucked out of school for that. But anyway, when I eventually left school, I only had one A level, I think. And so I had to stay on, decided to go to Cambridge Tech and took two more A levels. And in the hopes that it would give me qualifications to go to university. Unfortunately, I got one of them with flying colours, and the other one I didn't bother to turn up to the exam, even though I'd been top of the class, because I was too nervous. I thought I would rather not do it than do it and risk doing it badly,
Yeah.
which is a bonkers thing. I've heard of other people have understand that feeling. You know, you'd rather not do something than risk not giving your best performance in something. But anyway, so that was the case. And so I had two A levels, which for a lot of people was a decent qualification. But it wasn't enough for my dad. And at that time, he got an offer for a job that involved moving to Glasgow. And so he said, "Right, we'll have a family meeting on this, and let's see if we're going to go to Glasgow." So my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, and my mum and I sat there, and we had a little bit of discussion, which ended up three of us not wanting to go to Glasgow, and the discussion ended, "Right, well, we're leaving." Basically, he said, we're taking a caravan up to go and do some house hunting in 2 weeks' time.
So there was no point in the
So there was
meeting,
no
really.
point in the meeting at all. The decision was made. It was just a show. So we went up there, and I eventually had to get a proper job, um, which eventually turned out to be as a bank teller, which was quite fun for a short time. But then people kept pressing, "Oh, you've got to take your banking exams. You've got to do night school, go into Glasgow 2 nights a week, and after an 8 hour day and whatever." And we were 25 miles outside Glasgow, actually, where we lived. So it was quite a hassle. I did it by correspondence course. First lot of exams I got distinctions in. But I was going nowhere fast. And I got completely fed up with it because whatever I did in the branch, trying to get more experience, we were short staffed, so I couldn't do the things I really needed to do. And so I was getting more and more fed up with the whole business. And it was driving me around the bend. And eventually I went to see a doctor, and he said, "What you need to do," he said, you need some time off. So I said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be great." And eventually I went to my dad and I said, "Look, I know I messed up with the A levels and everything, didn't go to university, but I quite fancy going now. If there's any chance of a bit of support, would you be prepared to let me do it?" And thankfully he did.
What was the course you ended up studying?
I ended up studying, basically, it's the equivalent of what at Oxford or Cambridge would be PPE. So politics, philosophy, economics.
So, for the listener, Malcolm's main career path was radio presenting. Would you agree?
Yes, yes. It's a very complicated. I would say my main career path was actually writing, but through writing, um, I discovered broadcasting and an absolute. I'd always had an absolute love for sound, and I think that's from my mum's musical ear and her brilliance. I was. She was a fantastic musician.
When was it when you realised that broadcasting was for you?
Oh, it was completely by accident. When I got to uni, I'd been there 2 years. In the first year, the guy who we shared a bathroom, he was a third year student, so finally a student, so he left then. And the guy who moved in as a first year student was a guy called Nick Shaw, whose brother was John Shaw. John was firstly in the BBC, and then he moved over to, I don't know if he was headhunted, but he moved over to Radio Trent in about 1979. He was desperately looking for somebody to give the student's eye view of life in Nottingham. A slightly, he really wanted a quirky view. And Nick, his brother, said to him, I might have just the bloke for you. He said, but I don't think he's ever done any broadcasting. John Shaw said, would you think he could write a 5-minute voice piece? The first one just to be on how he, well, really almost questions you're asking me. When he came to Nottingham, what did he feel life was like as a student? And so that I thought I'd written a 5-minute voice piece. Went into the studios one evening in the week to record, set it everything up, and record me doing a 5-minute voice piece, which just means basically a scripted piece that was supposed to take 5 minutes. Nearly 20 minutes later, he said, "Right, I think we better cut there." So I said, "Well, I could do it quicker if you no, I don't want you to do it quicker." He said, "Let's sit down and talk this through." He said, "Content's terrific. I love what you're writing about." But then he gave me all sorts of broadcasting tips and tricks to think about. And he said, "Now, if you're still interested," I mean, he absolutely put me through the mill. We spent an hour, and he was just chopping me to bits. And he'd said to his brother after that, he said, "Well, that'll kill or cure him." And so he went, if you're really interested, I will give you another go, and let's see if we can do a 5-minute voice piece. And so I would listen to myself speaking. I would write and time myself roughly, and so it would be a comfortable read and all this sort of thing. And I had to teach myself all these things, but with John's prodding. Anyway, I went back the next week, bang on 5 minutes. He said, "Well, that's just a different world." He said, "That's absolutely perfect. Just what I want. Would you like to do this?" So I said, "Well, you bet. Yeah, I'd absolutely love to do it." Because after that, I know what convinced me was after the first time I'd been in and I was quaking in my boots, he said, "Right, what are you doing? What are you doing now? Are you going back?" He said, "Well, you could help out with the rock show if you want." I went, "What?" Okay, right, yeah. So I went into the master control room. The main studio was occupied by the rock show presenter who was interviewing a guy called Paul Jones, who was in fact a top blues R&B in the old genre, blues singer with a band called the Blues Band, which are actually, look them up, very well known British institution, really. I mean, absolutely superb musicians, great fun, wonderful people. Paul Jones was being interviewed in the main studio, but the rest of the blues band, about 4 of them, were sat in this little master control room. And John just said, "Well, see if they want a coffee or anything, Malcolm. Go and introduce yourself." And they were one of my favourite bands, actually, or a band I'd heard a lot of. And so I went in, and I was a bit starstruck. I tried not to show it, but I was. Yeah, I think anybody would be under circumstances like that.
Yeah, 100%.
And I went in, and they just treated me as if I'd been working in the radio station for, say, 5 years or something. Not that it was my first night of experiencing anything like it and anything like sort of stardom.
Sorry to interrupt, but we've got something to tell you. It's Jamie here.
And Daniel here.
And we are from the Making It podcast because you're listening to that right now. Please give us a follow on Spotify and click the notification button because we want you to keep listening and we hope that you're enjoying our content.
And follow us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter and Facebook, all at Making It Poddy.
And drop us an email, makingitpoddy@gmail.com. Enjoy the episode and we'll see you soon.
Enjoy.
Which it seemed to me, I mean, it was, wow, this is amazing. And I just fell in love with the whole environment, the atmosphere. I'd always loved writing, as you know, but the broadcasting aspect of it was something that I really enjoyed, and the discipline of learning how to use voice and then subsequently how to edit voice and structure programs and structure interviews was just something that just seemed to fit like a piece in a jigsaw. It was almost the missing bit in my life's jigsaw.
So what's really interesting to me is obviously me being 20 and my friends being around similar ages. Obviously, it took you till you were mid-20s to
Yeah,
discover that
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So it almost feels like I've got a lot of friends who are in a position where they feel like they're waiting for that moment to realize it's something they really love and they want to do that for the rest of their life. Maybe some people are in jobs right now they don't want to be in. What would you say to someone who's in that position right now, who's trying to find that thing so desperately and doesn't enjoy what they're doing right now? Do you get where I'm coming from?
I get exactly where you're coming from, and I was in that position, absolutely in that
I
position
think of
where,
the bank, and that's like the
oh, when
perfect
I was in the bank, and I
way
could,
to describe it.
oh, there were times then when I was just thinking, God, is this it? I remember lying in the bath. I'd taken a day off for some reason. I probably invented a migraine or something. And I was lying in the bath, and the sun was streaming in through the window about 9 o'clock one morning, and I'm just thinking, where do I, how do I get out of this? Where do I go? What do I want to do? And I hadn't a clue. Apparently, my grandfather told me when I was much younger, when I was about 11, he says, "Oh, I distinctly remember you telling me when I asked you that you wanted to be a journalist, and that was when you were 11." And so, yeah, so I probably in the back of my mind, I did have a rough idea of, but I hadn't a clue how to get into it. And to this day, if anybody asks me, and I'm sure people do, and I'm sure more will, um, how do you get into broadcasting? Or anything like that. Something that there isn't a career path as such. There isn't your careers teachers at school can't point you in the right direction. I know for a fact that university careers departments are pretty clueless at pointing people in that direction because my goddaughter recently asked me about it. She's doing brilliantly in media studies and psychology or something as well, believe it or not. But she was doing absolutely brilliantly. Um, Wanted to get experience and wondered if I could pull any strings. Now, the people that I knew, and I used to know an awful lot of people in the business, have either retired or died. Sadly, that's what happens. I said, I'll do what I can, but I can't promise anything. And she got in touch with Anne Marie Minhold, who is on Classic FM. And so she got a couple of days or whatever shadowing her down there, and then she's advised her on one or two things. So, but again, it's completely. I got into it, and I suspect loads of other people will get into it completely by accident. The one thing I would always advise is, although it's a horrible cheapskate way of doing things, um, just offer to do anything for nothing
Yeah.
to get yourself experience. But also anybody you're working with, if you could find yourself a slot or somebody in media who's willing to give you a chance, they will very, very quickly spot if you've got a spark. And it's that rather than loads of qualifications.
So how would you reach out to someone? Like how say like with your goddaughter, she
Yeah,
obviously knew you,
yeah.
but let's say someone wants to get into what you did as a career. How do they get in contact with somebody?
Just write us. Well, it's not letters anymore. We used to say just write letters,
You probably,
loads of
you
letters.
probably could write that these days. It'd
Actually,
probably be that. That's like a
it will be so different,
yeah,
and it would, if you could write a good letter, if somebody can write a good letter, then that would make a big difference because apart from anything else, it shows you've actually taken the time to think it through, plan it, and think of how do I get somebody's attention rather than anybody can send an email or a text or a WhatsApp or something if you get a number. But actually writing a letter is something that is actually, yeah, you've made a good point there. It's a unique way of doing it nowadays.
Yeah, it's almost like what used to be the normal way is now like a unique way.
It is.
A question which I really wanted to ask you, and it might be too deep, but I know we would speak on text yesterday, so you can never get too deep. But across like your life so far, what would you say has been the most important thing to you through all of it, through all those trials and tribulations, the times where you didn't know what to do with your life, the times where you did? What was always the underlying factor which was you realised was the most important thing in life to you?
Realizing that you're good enough, I think. I mean, there are all sorts of different aspects to that, but it took me ages and ages and ages to realize that I was not an imposter and that I actually was considered good enough. And it wasn't. I think it's really it's when people, your colleagues, people you work with, or it's not just. I mean, it starts very very early on. It depends how your parents, whether they give you confidence and allow you to breathe and develop, which again, my dad did not. I had to do everything. I was told what to do, and I was told what was expected of me, which was come top in everything. And if I came second, his first question wasn't, "Oh, that's brilliant, well done." It was, "Why didn't you come first? Who came first?" And I said, "Well, there are actually people who are better than me." Doubt it. I was expected to come top in everything. So realizing, it took me ages and ages and ages. I questioned everything I did. I didn't know whether I was good enough because I wasn't told that I was good enough at various stages. And part of the reason being, I sound a bit bitter here, because part of the reason being that I was never told that I was good enough by my parents, by my dad particularly, um, because he was one of these old school types who thought that if you told a kid that they'd done really well at something, they get big headed and they wouldn't try anymore. And so I was never told because it'd make him big headed. Oh, I can't have him being big headed. He's got to keep trying. And so I never knew I was good enough at anything, which is why telling you about that exam earlier on, that I didn't bother to go in and sit an A level because I didn't think I could be good enough, even though I was top of the year in classwork and I loved the subject. It was actually geography. Um, and I loved it. And I didn't turn up to the exam because I didn't think I'd revised hard enough for it.
So what would you? It's a confidence thing. Would you say
It
it's a
is.
confidence
I would
thing?
say it's a
So
confidence
if you
thing.
were to give some advice to your younger self, what would you say to a younger Malcolm who feels like he's not good enough to give him that sort of boost in confidence?
I'd say sod everybody else. I'm right. No, it's a very difficult one because until you actually get somebody who believes in you and backs you, it's very difficult to develop confidence if you're not naturally. So, I mean, some people are naturally um, very confident people right from a very young age, and probably they may have family who encourage them to be confident and go out and do whatever, and tell them that they're good enough and all this sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, how could I have been more confident? Very difficult until you're given a reason to cling on to something that makes you believe that, well, yeah, maybe I am quite good at this. See, I was always very good at cricket. I mean, I captained cricket teams for, when I was 2 or 3 years too young to be in the side type thing. And stayed in for ages, school teams. And I opened the batting, I opened the bowling. I was, always in the local papers for doing things and all like that. So I was really good at cricket. Now I knew I was really good at cricket, um, but I think my dad probably came to about 3 cricket matches I ever played in 35 years. or 40 years. So he sort of used to take me to the odd game or pick me up if somebody else wouldn't do it. So I never got my confidence in that from him. I think I got it from my grandfather, who was a cricket lover, and he believed I was good. And but again, I needed that boost at a certain time when I was developing in cricket to let me know that it was worth keeping on and pushing on, that I was actually pretty unusually good as a youngster. That all, as everybody caught up and grew bigger, that sort of diminished quite a lot. So I was never going to be a county cricketer or play for England or anything like that. But I knew I was good in that because for that reason. But it wasn't. This is really weird, and this is when I said we're getting a bit deep, because this weekend has been quite an emotional weekend for me, because there was a 50th anniversary of Radio Trent. I joined 80. I started writing these voice pieces at about 80, and then subsequently wrote when I'd left university. It couldn't be a student's view of Nottingham or whatever it was. It then became my Tuesday musings.
So you had your own like sort of page, or was it a
Well,
show?
no, it was a voice piece that lasted 5 or 6 minutes that I would do every Tuesday,
And it get played on the radio.
and they get played on the
Yeah.
radio, and they were called Tuesday musings, my Tuesday musings. And I would pick. Julie will tell you, my wife, but I'd lay newspapers out on the floor in the flat where we're living and chop little tiny obscure stories out and find links between stories, and then I could form a theme with all these stories linking together and coming back. My perfect ideal was to come back to a circle, come back, start there, go around there, lead one subject into another subject into another subject.
And will this be based on the previous week?
This will be based on news that happened, current affairs, sporting events, anything, government things, anything in the previous week that things that seemed vaguely ridiculous. So I had to be able to find a completely bonkers angle in them, and so hopefully they were designed to entertain, but also there were tons of really obscure stories that different people picked up on and even followed through, in the newsroom and things like that, because they hadn't heard about these obscure stories. But I'd link them together. Then I got to know everybody at the station really well in different departments, and eventually I went to the program controller, Chris Hughes, and I said, Chris, I've had an idea. I'd like to do a program. And it was a direct rip-off there was a program on television that I really liked the idea of. I think it was called Did You See? Basically, I would invite 3 guests a week and I'd want them to watch, say, 3 programs over the course of the week, each of them, same 3 programs, and to come back and we would discuss what we thought of those television programs. And I would be the host, and I would be asking the questions and all this sort of thing. And that was great fun, and it worked really well. And I met some really interesting people, because these were people from all around Nottingham, from different walks of life in Nottingham that I might have bumped into, or somebody might have suggested they'd be good on your freeze frame, I called it. They'd be good on freeze frame. This person would be good on freeze frame. And so I'd meet people, and these were my guests. I'd have guests for the week. And after that finished, it had a run of about 13 programs. I think that tended to be the number that you did at a season or a mini season or whatever. It was running out, obviously, and Chris Hughes said, "What's your idea?" And so I said, "Well, with my name, and there's a Nottingham connection here, Mortimer. Oh, Mortimer's Hole." I said, "Yes," and it's still sort of vaguely suggestive as well. So I said, "Well, let's see what we can cram into Mortimer's Hole." And I said, "I want Mortimer's Hole to be a magazine program, just a half-hour program, where I could do whatever I want." Chris allowed me the complete freedom to do it. had to develop a theme tune, which is, I love it. I absolutely love it. I used some fantastic music, stitched all sorts of sound effects together. And so I had a sequence of somebody flushing a toilet and then politician Norman Tebbit saying, "No, you can't do that. That's nonsense. You can't tell lies like this." And then my theme tune would be underneath it and then come up at the end. And I'd say, good evening and welcome.
It just sounds like you're having good fun,
Oh,
to be honest.
fantastic
And
fun.
would you say for you that is also another really important thing? Like, obviously, people are very conflicted between making money in life. Obviously, you need it as a resource, but there's also that idea of it sounds like from what you've said on this podcast is a lot of the things you've done with your career, the main part, the broadcasting, it was just enjoyable. Like you loved it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a job. People often say about things they love doing, professional sportsmen or whatever. Um, aren't I'm just so lucky to be doing this. It doesn't seem like a job. Well, it wasn't. I used to get back from Radio Trent, and my wife had been working down as a pharmacist at Leicester Royal Infirmary, sort of 8 or 9 hour day, dead on her feet. And then I'd come in and she said, "What was your day at school like?" So yeah, it was pretty much a day at school. Yeah, I mean, we just had fun. We played tons and tons of practical jokes on each other, some of which were are legendary. Some were quite
Oh, give us
dangerous.
one legendary one.
Oh, quite a dangerous one, actually. Really, I used to smoke. Well, I still do every now and again. Smoke a pipe, and in those days there was no regulation about smoking inside and at work or anything like that. And what used to happen, unless I was very, very careful, because I had to make sure that my tobacco and my pipe were with me at all times, because I went out to grab I don't know, a baked potato from Hounds on Houndsgate or something, come back into the office with it. In that sort of 10 minutes or so, or 15 minutes that I was out getting that, some of the guys in across two different departments and girls, um, got some rubber bands, chopped up the rubber bands with an editing razor blade, took some gunpowder out of a little banger or something like that, and then mixed it up with a little bit of tobacco and emptied my pipe out and rubbed another lot together with all this in it and plunked it in my pipe. When I got back, I thought, I don't remember finishing that pipe. Oh, well, I must have done. Lighter. That tastes great, doesn't it? Wow. Oh. Bits hit the ceiling, and there was purple smoke coming
Did
out
it not
of
hit
it.
your face?
No, because it was luckily. I'm surprised it didn't because my nose comes out quite a long way. No, it was. No, but as soon as that, bloody hell, what was that? So that did go on, and I had to be very, very careful. After a while, after I'd sort of decided all this broadcasting I was doing was freelance. So I was a freelancer. But when I got married, I sort of felt an obligation to get something of a steady income and a proper income. And I found there was a vacancy in the script writing department for the commercials. And I thought, well, I can do that. So I went to see the guy who was in charge of commercial production, Alan Bailey, who's a great mate. He said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Here's some briefs. See if you can do me 2 or 3 commercials from those briefs. A 30-second commercial, a 60-second commercial, and a 20-second commercial." So I went off and did those, got them back, and he gave them to his senior script writer, and he said, "What do you make of these?" "Yeah, they're fine. Yeah, they're fine, no problem." "Right, Morts, as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite happy to take you on, but you've got to go and see the sales manager who's in charge of everything to do with commercials." And so I went to him, and he said, "Oh, I'd no idea you might be interested in that. I'd have told you that there was a job going. Oh, we've already closed the applications." And I said, "Well, read these and see what you think anyway." And he did. And he said, "Right, when can you start?" So I started commercial production then and writing scripts. When I actually finished and left, uh, about 7 years after that, to join the Evening Post as their marketing promotions writer, they held it, there was a sort of leaving do type thing. And in our little department, everybody was gathered in from loads of different departments in the radio station, and we all had drinks and all sorts of things. And I was told to sit at my typewriter, and somebody was going to take some pictures. We used to, I mean, it was literally, it was almost a steam-driven typewriter. What I didn't realise was that there was a long cable leading to a shelf, cleverly concealed down a table leg and run under a bit of carpet, leading to a shelf, like a large shelf down that sort of level. And I hadn't seen the car battery that the wires were hooked to, and I hadn't actually seen the wires. I hadn't realised they were. And they went into a metal ashtray that was sat right deeply under my typewriter. There were two bare wires that could be twisted together. And that's right, they were twisted together, sat on a little pile of gunpowder. Again, gunpowder, quite dangerous. When somebody touched the connections, again, I'd no reason to look across the room and see somebody down by a shelf like that. When they touched the connections together, the idea was, and what actually happened, was that there was an explosion, and that this explosion rose right through the typewriter, and that did send the ashtray, this little metal ashtray, flying up and across, and that sent a massive smoke. The other things we used to do, we when filing cabinets, for some reason they had to get some new furniture in the office furniture, like big metal filing cabinets and things with great big drawers in them. But they used to get delivered in huge cardboard packages, they're really well packaged. And because they were really sharp and heavy, these cabinets, they had corners, and up the sides and things were heavy rubberized foam inserts to stop them moving around. And these had a kind of cardboard back, but it made them absolutely perfect. You broke them down, made them absolutely perfect for flinging and slinging. And they were quite heavy enough to hurt. It was a bit like an icy snowball weight. It was that sort of thing. But we would have battles. That somebody quickly said, shh, 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 Ron's coming. Ron was the managing director. And so Ron would come through the opening and down the little steps and find everybody either sat reading something or so innocently looking around and pretending to talk to somebody. So it was a completely fabricated scene. And he said, right, get on with whatever you were doing. Pretend I haven't come in. So, because I know it was up to no good. But anyway, we've got this job and this job and this job have to go out today. Okay, Ron, right, we'll do that. And so in between working, we worked our proverbials off. We worked really, really hard for not a vast amount of money. It wasn't particularly well paid, but it was fantastic fun. And we worked hard and we played hard. We all went over to the pub after work, and we'd sort of have a couple of hours together and have a drink. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful existence.
And I think for the listener, it's like obviously everyone has their own choice of how they want to live their life and make it in their own right. But from what I've heard from doing this podcast with you, Malcolm, is you had a lot of fun doing what you did. As much as you didn't believe you were good enough at times, you still had a good fun along the way. And for those listening right now, like you are good enough, and it's just understanding that. And obviously, like you say, sometimes you need that person to tell you that. You got Malcolm today to tell you that you're good enough.
Well, yes, but the other thing is, and this might surprise you, I only truly realised that I was good enough 2 days ago. 2 days ago, because I went to this do and saw all sorts of people I'd worked with. This was 50th anniversary, so I mean, it's nearly 40 years since I was working there. and to see so many people that a lot had died and couldn't be there, but there was still plenty who were there, and plenty who came after me, who were a lot, a much younger generation of broadcaster or advertising copywriters or whatever. And to get some of the absolutely gobsmacking comments of really kind comments saying, "Oh, you're a legend. You were a legend here." And I said, "What? Don't be stupid." Because everybody took the mickey out of me, and I treated it as banter and took the mickey out of them. And, you developed a hard skin. And people actually came up and were just saying, the most creative copywriting that we ever had, or the best. One of the guys, David Lloyd, who, again, he was in charge of commercial radio, a very, very senior role in commercial radio until about 5 years ago. He said, "I'd never realized how good you were as an interviewer. But I'd never known until the other day, 2 days ago, that other people in the building actually thought they were fantastic interviews. I had no clue. I thought I was just being humoured. And, oh, yeah, well, yeah, we'll let Mal do that. Yeah, let him do that." But I was pulled to one side on Saturday and said, David said, "I've never had the chance to say to you, just what a great job you did with your interviewing technique, and how fantastic some of the stuff you did in Mortimer's Hole was."
What did that teach you? Did that make you realise that people should be telling people more often that they're doing a good job?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are two different, I think there are, well, at least two different types of people. But if you're talking about confidence, there are those who need to be told that they're on the right track and they're doing well. And there's nothing wrong with that. I put myself in that category. I put my grandpa, who's my hero, was a hero in the First World War and won the Military Cross and did incredibly brave things. He was one of those people who never needed anybody to praise him. He was completely self-contained from that point of view, and I often wish I could be much more like him. And I admire people who don't need to feel, they don't need to have praise. I love to have a little bit of praise and to be told well done. It's probably a weakness.
I'm the same as well, to be honest. But for me, I don't feel it's a weakness. For me, it's just like it's nice for someone to acknowledge something you're doing.
Isn't it?
For me, it makes me want to do it more.
Yes, absolutely. Same with me. But I mean, to all these people, several others said some lovely things about the advertising, because I won a load of awards there for advertising, which they'd never won before or since. So I'm the only award winner in the advertising department there. And I won some at the Evening Post as well. They told me that winning those awards told me that I was doing a decent job. But it would have been nice to know from people directly at the time that my programs were doing a decent job. I was doing a decent job with that, and with the advertising. People just assumed that I knew I was good.
Yeah.
I know it sounds really stupid, and it probably sounds really arrogant to say I knew I was good, but I mean, they backed it up a couple of days ago by all saying, what a great job you did.
But then it's also nice.
I wish I'd known then.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, like, obviously you wish you knew then, but it's nice to now know that now.
Yes,
it could be. There could always be worse.
Yes, I could sort of carp him, and I'd just be really happy that I know. I mean, seriously, it's sort of rounded off a little bit of my life, and I think, oh, so I did make it after all.
There you go. So coming towards the end of the podcast, is there anything you would like the listener to take away from anything else you said? Because I feel like you've already said a lot, but is there anything you
I've said far too much already. I mean, the only thing is, believe in yourself. It's not always easy to do that, and it took me years and years and years to believe in myself. If you You can usually tell whether you're going along the right track or not. But try and avoid people. There are people at work. If you're in a job, there are often people at work who aren't particularly nice people deep down. They might seem to be okay, but there are people at work who have hidden agendas. They might view you as a threat. You've got to be very careful about who advises you and who you trust. But once you've found you can trust somebody's opinion, and they are telling you that you're doing the right things, then green lights on. It's good to go. But you have to believe in yourself. Sometimes it needs somebody to tell you that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Malcolm. It's been an absolute pleasure
Well,
to have you on.
it's been great.
I've loved all your stories. I've loved all your messages. Thank you very much.
Thanks for putting up with me.
Thank you very much.